Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be walking you through how to use the Orchestra CLI to import YAML definitions of pipelines into your Orchestra account. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what this is and how we initially get set up. Then I'm going to go into perhaps some of the use cases and the whys behind this. We'll then run through an example of a basic pipeline and running this through GitHub Actions. Then finally we'll wrap up with any kind of caveats that is worth looking out for when you do this for the first time. So, getting set up. First things first is you'll need to be able to install and authenticate the Orchestra CLI. So if you've not done this before, there's a page in our docs on how to get set up. It's pretty straightforward, can be pip installed. And then after that, we'll be looking for the Orchestra API key as an environment variable to be able to authenticate against your Orchestra account. Once you have these two things, you're pretty much there, apart from you'll need the API key accessible in whichever Git provider you're using. From this, the command we're going to be most interested in today is import, fairly obviously. And if we read the docs about this, it's a pretty simple command to use. So all we're going to need to know is an alias. This is not the descriptive name you see in the UI. This is a unique alias that we give to the pipeline to make sure it has like a code representation. The path to the YAML file that has your pipeline definition, fairly obvious we're going to need that one, and working branch. As this is a Git context, we will try and detect this for you if one isn't provided, but whether you have a use case for it or if you just want to be extra sure, you can provide it here as well. And this means the pipeline will originally be associated with that branch, but this may not be the default branch in your Git integration from Orchestra as well. But we'll cover a bit more of that later. So if we were to look at an example GitHub Actions pipeline of running the Orchestra CLI to import a YAML file, it could look a little something like this. As you can see, I've just walked through the steps we just looked at. I've pip installed the Orchestra CLI. I'm actually validating it, though the Orchestra import command will also validate it before attempting to pass it to the API, so you don't necessarily need this step. It's nice in CI. And you can see I'm passing an alias called test import GitHub pipeline. I've got my path to my pipeline file, and my working branch is actually the pull request branch that I'm running this on for this. But more importantly, I'm passing the Orchestra API key in the environment using my secrets. Nothing too crazy. So if we now jump into the pipeline YAML itself, this is where it gets a little more difficult. So if you're not familiar with the YAML representations of pipelines in Orchestra, it's probably useful to build one in the UI first and then download the YAML or just view it to get an understanding of what kind of keys or attributes there are, though they will be pretty similar to the UI, but it might help you with a little bit of the syntax and the structure as well. So you can see here, I've defined a very basic pipeline with 2 task blocks in it. If we start to click through, we'll be able to see some of the very familiar values that we would have set if I built this with clicks instead. So the first task block contains one task of get snowflake tables, and all this does is run a very short snowflake query, queries the account usage schema information and gets me 10 table names. Nothing too exciting, but good enough for now. You can see that I've set some other attributes about it that you'd recognize from this UI, including what it depends on, nothing is the first task, a name, connection, one of the examples of things you might find useful to download, you might need that ID. And if I go into task block 2, we have another simple task called pass query results. And as you can see, I've said this depends on the previous task block. So this helps build the lineage in the pipeline. Looking in here, it's a very simple Python integration job that runs an inline script. Another familiar part of the UI, the build command, I've got it set here, and then some basic Python to just read the output of the previous task and print it to the console. Nothing too crazy. So if we put these two together and open it in a GitHub context, you can see that all I've done is upload my 2 files. I'm still going to be reading my secrets from GitHub itself, and here is my full pipeline definition as is. We can see that this action then runs in GitHub, and under my import pipeline from YAML step, you see I've got a success message to say it's successfully imported my pipeline to Orchestra. So we can go over there now and take a look at what it's built for us. And here it is, a pipeline deployed from YAML. This is the alias I was previously mentioning. As you can see, it's not quite the same as the descriptive name, pretty close in this case. And if we click into the pipeline itself to edit it, we'll be able to see a bit more about what we just deployed. So, first of all, this has showed me that the branch does not contain the pipeline because I haven't merged it to main yet. Not a big deal. Main was just the default for the GitHub integration I'm using, and I can actually just switch onto the branch of relevance and see my pipeline. Switch to the right branch, and now here it is, exactly as we expected. Simple Snowflake task, complete with the query we saw earlier, a parse results Python task, and that is all of our pipeline. Now, if we come up into the pipeline storage settings that you may be familiar with, you can see that this pipeline is now linked to the repository that the pull request was opened on, the path to the file, and as you can see, the default branch is main, hence why it didn't show up originally. Now, once this has happened, you no longer need to run the import command on any changes to that file. It is linked in the same way as it would have been if you defined it here and set GitHub as your backend as the storage for the pipeline definition. So once you've run import once, running it every time will just throw a bunch of errors. It's already imported. Orchestra knows where that file is, where the definition is, and keeps it in sync. And that's all there is to it, really. If you're going to do this for the first time, it's worth coming and reading the documentation, checking for any notes and any caveats that exist to make sure you've got everything covered and no strange errors. Apart from that, yeah, good luck. Let us know if you have any other comments, and thanks for watching.